morning, everyone. We're going to begin with an update from Dr. Levine.
Good morning. Thought I would start today by sharing some of the numbers with you. We're up to just shy of 760 cases in Vermont, but as the curve, which you can all see on our website, healthvermont.gov/COVID-19, there's clearly a tendency towards a plateauing. The number of blue new cases continues to be much smaller than our prior experience. And the percent of all the tests done each day that are positive continues to be a much smaller percentage, in the 5% or less range. Unfortunately, we still have to endure the tragedy of death, and there have been 29 total deaths in Vermont. If there is a good news aspect to that, one can go on the New York Times coronavirus webpage and follow what they call the coronavirus death tracker and look at the various rates that deaths double in various states. Most of the states that have a lot of activity, the deaths are doubling in the range of every 3 days, 2 to 3 days, up to maybe 7. Vermont seems to be at about 2 weeks. So on the curve, that's barely registering. So though these are all very important and tragic and significant events, I don't want to diminish them by any means. As an indicator of how we're doing in the epidemic, we're doing very well. And we continue to have a very aggressive program in our long-term care facilities, and we'll continue to get even more aggressive with enhanced interventions and testing. So I just wanted to say philosophically for my final comments, you know, the current focus has been, as we've always talked, about so-called flattening of the curve, which means suppressing the spread of virus, raising or lifting the line, that line that represents the capacity of the healthcare system, making sure we don't exceed that and come in well under it, so not overwhelming the healthcare system's capacity to deal with this crisis, and then containing the virus as best we can and containing outbreaks. So as we look at the future, and I'm only giving an introductory discussion, not an exhaustive discussion today, we need to keep in mind that initial projections across the country were that maybe 20 to 50% of citizens would be infected by the virus. Thoughts are now thinking that maybe it's under 10%. I say that only because it means that there are a lot of people who will not have had experience with the virus as we go into our future of trying to reopen things once again. And so one of the major thrusts of our energies will still have to be on protecting Vermonters from getting infected prior to the time we have effective treatments for the virus, or even more optimistically, an effective vaccine for the virus. So that will be our overall public health goal during that period of time. So as we look into the future, we're going to definitely need to have very robust data on spread, rate of exposure. Hopefully serology testing will prove out to be a way of understanding who may be immune and who may not be. But it won't be an end totally to social distancing. It won't be an end to limitations on large gatherings. Won't be an end perhaps to facial coverings or all of the public hygiene things we've talked about all the time that individuals can do for themselves. We'll still have to maintain a very aggressive testing strategy and have robust supplies of testing materials. We'll still need to do very aggressive contact tracing and making sure that we can contain any localized outbreaks and make sure we have the workforce to do the contact tracing. And we will establish, as you'll hear later this week, what the proper role of serologic testing is, looking for antibodies in blood. So that's all my comments today, and I'll return it to the governor now.
Thank you, Dr. Levine, and encouraging signs, to say the least. All our actions are having some benefit here in Vermont. So, as you may have noticed, we have some special guests with us, or going to have some special guests with us by video today. That's because I want to recognize many of our partners who have joined our fight against COVID-19. Over the last several weeks, I've had the opportunity to thank Vermonters for their sacrifices while they stay at home for the greater good. As well, I've recognized the hard work of our leaders and experts and those on the front lines who have worked long hours, rolled up their sleeves in service to our state and country. But we're also very fortunate to have many friends across the state who have stepped up and shown so much generosity, innovation, and a commitment to service. And while I'd like to have all of them here in the room today to thank them in person, during these times it's best to socially distance ourselves. I'm pleased, however, to have three of them joining us to speak on behalf of so many who have been critical teammates in our response to this crisis. In a few minutes, we'll hear from Donna Carpenter, owner of Burton Snowboards, who will share more about Burton's incredible work to get 500,000 KN95 masks to healthcare workers here in Vermont, as well as New Hampshire, New York, and Massachusetts. I might also add that this proved to be much more complicated than initially thought and hit many, many roadblocks. But the team at Burton never gave up, and I'm grateful for that. We also hear about the innovative work being done at UVM, who has been such a great partner in so many ways, from their help with testing and hosting a surge site to supporting the Burlington community in many other ways, which President Garamella will describe shortly. And finally, we'll have Marty Matheson from JV Air to talk about their organized team effort that's helped to expedite test specimens to Mayo Clinic in Minnesota. And also, while they aren't here today, I want to thank UVM Medical Center, Green Mountain Messenger, Heritage Flight, Monterey Flight Services, and as well individually, Angelo, Ramo, and Jim Pizzagalli, who have all been a part of this tremendous effort. This has been critical to expanding our testing capacity and turnaround time, and it's just another example of the willingness of so many across the state to step up and help out. Additionally, I want to recognize some of the companies across the state who have donated time, goods, services, and much, much more, like Concept 2, Revision Military, Beta Technologies, Keurig, Edlin, General Dynamics, Global Foundries, Twincraft, Pompanusic Mills, Cold Hollow Cider, Autumn Harp, and so many others, too many to name, and I realize I probably miss dozens of other unsung heroes. But I want each and every one of you to know we truly could not do this without you. And this is exactly why I know Vermont will get through this crisis. We'll come through it more united and stronger than ever before, thanks to the ingenuity, generosity, and service of the people and organizations all across our state. I feel personally so fortunate to be governor of this great state, where in a crisis like this, we can rely on each other to get through it. So with that, hopefully, we'll be able to turn it over to our first video guest, the first time we've done this, Donna Carpenter. Donna?
Hi, thank you, Governor. Can you hear me?
We can. Thank you very much, Donna.
Yeah, thank you, Governor. Thank you for all your hard work. I honestly never thought I'd be sitting here talking about Burton sourcing medical masks. it's kind of insane when you think about it, what private companies are doing to step in when it really should be the federal government. That being said, we are manufacturers. Burton has been making high-quality gear around the world for 40 years now. We're also a very entrepreneurial company. Maybe I'm a little bit biased, but I would say my late husband, Jake, was one of the greatest entrepreneurs ever. And like a great entrepreneur, when you told him something was impossible, that just made him more determined to do it. And I think we've really instilled that into our company. That's part of our company DNA now. So when I challenged my product team about a month ago to see what we could do during this crisis, they not only thought big, but then they were able to execute and get it done. I originally asked our global senior product manager, Chris Cunningham, whether we could start 3D printing these masks that they need. And within a few hours, he had talked to some of our long-term trusted suppliers in China who had much larger large-scale production possibilities for us. I think it's important to understand we didn't just go to a factory, some random factory, and place an order for $500,000 masks to be delivered in 2 to 3 weeks. We have more than 50 people on the ground in China who work for Burton, who manage production control. They had to go into the factory and say, is this really an FDA-approved mask? Is it really, hitting the right specs? And then they have to control for capacity. Do they really have the people and the machines, they say, to produce this amount? I'm sure you guys have heard there have been a lot of scams out there. So we worked with our largest binding supplier, a company called Foodakin. I'd really like to give them a shout out. They actually paid for the samples to be made. That was part of the process we had to manage. I think one of my product managers, my lead product manager on this, was meeting with the governor's chief of staff, handing off samples in the Waterbury Park and Ride parking lot. I think it looked like a pretty sketchy drug deal or something going down. But once we got the okay from the state on the quality, we locked in the order and went into full production. As you can imagine, it's been very difficult getting things air freighted from China to the U.S. right now. We had our whole logistics and our global logistics and transportation teams in Burlington helping us work through that. Fortunately, Burton, we have just entered into a joint venture with a partner in China, something we've been working on for a couple of years, and we just signed the deal recently. A guy named Lei Zhang, and his company is called Hill House, and they were able to procure a deal with UPS to get us there. So I want to thank our partners in China for that. We did have issues with U.S. Customs, but the Vermont State Police were able to help, and we were able to resolve those issues. I did want to mention that Burton, true to our spirit, we've found other ways to help. We are using our 3D printers at our rapid prototype facility here in Burlington. It's called Craig's Facilities. We worked with Boston Children's Hospital to design and print approximately 500 face shields for healthcare workers, along with thousands of face shield parts every week, and to be distributed in regional hospitals. That work is ongoing. I really want to thank the guys who are working during this time at Craig's for, they're rapidly prototyping not snowboards or bindings, but face shields. So I really want to thank all of them. Our goggle and helmet division, Anon, is working closely with an organization called Goggles for Docs. So far, we have donated over 1,500 new pairs of Anon goggles directly to hospitals. We've set up a bin outside of our Burlington headquarters where customers can drop off their new or used goggles, and we will quarantine them before getting them distributed through Goggles for Dust. Lastly, we have opened up our Performer program, which is a membership discount program for fellow outdoor industry professionals. We've opened up this program to healthcare professionals, and we've had over 2,500 join already. So what we've done and what we're doing isn't easy. We're still managing the process of producing and shipping masks, making face shields, and shipping out goggles for doctors. But I would like to thank the governor and everyone in his office for handling the distribution of the masks. They've been incredibly easy to work with. I feel luckier than ever to live here personally and have my company based here. I know that the governor and everybody involved shares the same values we do of people first and community first. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Donna. And I can say the large shoes or boots that Jake has left have been filled by you and Team Burton, and his legacy of giving continues throughout this ordeal. So thank you very much for everything you're doing.
Right on, Jake.
Next up is President Suresh Garamella from UVM.
Yes. Governor Scott, thank you so much for inviting me to join you. This is a challenging time in Vermont and around the world. It's difficult to comprehend the scope of economic loss and difficulty that faces our state as well as our nation. And as the state's only land-grant institution, UVM stands ready to help recover from this public health emergency and help UVM and all of Vermont thrive well into the future. I'm very pleased to share with you some examples in which, ways in which UVM is assisting with the response to this crisis. You've all seen, I think, some pictures of Patrick Gym that looks very different today than it did just months ago. It's fully outfitted and prepared to accept surge patients. Converse Health parking lot has been transformed to provide additional space for the hospital for patient screening and triage. The Davis Center kitchen facilities are opening to enable preparation of meals for personnel both here at Patrick Gym and at other surge sites, including Essex Fairgrounds. We provided parking close to the medical center for hospital staff who need it. I was very, very pleased when we were able to arrange for 95 nursing students to graduate on May 1st rather than the third week of the month to enable them to join the workforce sooner and provide relief to our overstressed healthcare workers. They had a choice whether to graduate May 1st or later, and every single one of them chose to graduate sooner. Our Larner College of Medicine has prepared over 4,000 test kits for Vermont, along with the people, the equipment, and the expertise to deploy them. Our scientists have designed a new emergency ventilator that is simple and inexpensive to produce and has been hailed by many as innovative and elegant. It can be produced for a few $100s, I understand, and they're trying to fast-track the FDA approvals and such. Over 36 clinical engineers and biomedical technicians have fanned out across the state to create additional ICU spaces at hospitals large and small, while also reprocessing ventilators and PPE coming into the state to ensure proper quality control. And of course, the frontline workers, our medical faculty, are sharing their expertise, but they're also distributing videos on topics ranging from the importance of social distancing and hand washing and other precautions to how to care for cooped up children, to how to address medical health for children and young adults during this period. our medical faculty also stand ready to redeploy to assist emergency and ICU physicians as necessary. I'd be remiss if I didn't note that UVM, like the rest of the state's businesses and organizations, is facing its share of financial challenges and uncertainties, could reach into the tens of millions of dollars. But families are struggling, and I'm very pleased. I'm more pleased today than when I made the announcement that we are freezing tuition for the coming year. And as we look into the future, we have a critical need to evolve our educational model, to offer more online classes, and help Vermont even further. So in closing, Governor Scott, I want to say that we value our partnership with the state. Our land grant mission demands that we engage with and support the state. Certainly, the state has helped us, help more Vermonters attend UVM. Please help us, and we are here ready to help you as well. We will get through this together, and we stand ready to partner. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you very much, Suresh. And when you arrived in Vermont not too long ago, I'm not sure you fully expected this challenge to fall in your lap, but I truly believe you were the right person at the right time to lead UVM through this and help our state. So thank you very much for all your efforts. And finally, we're going to have Marty Matheson of JV Air. Marty?
Hi. Hello, Governor. Can you hear me?
We can.
Okay, wonderful. I won't take long. I want to thank some very, very generous and some resourceful people, and I'm going to start with Commissioner Mike Shirley. He's a fellow pilot, and he happened to know myself and Kirk Walters very well from some piloting stuff. And on March 29th, he reached out to my partner, Kirk Walters, and said we had a problem. Deborah Leonard from the UVM lab had approached him and said they were driving their samples to Boston to get on airlines from Logan, and the flight was canceled with all the samples in the courier vehicle. The samples were, I think, went bad, and they were stuck there with no solutions. And as the economy was getting worse and the airlines were canceling more, that became less reliable. And I understand that the UVM Health Network collects from about 230 places, doctors' offices, and hospitals, and there's no way for them to make the FedEx cutoff at 6:30. You get consolidated at UVM and end up around 9:30. They have all the boxes ready to go. So about 24 hours later, I had made some phone calls, and I want to thank Donna Carpenter because they were ready and willing to help. They had some bureaucratic red tape there for the airplane, but they were ready and willing to help. So I want to mention that. But the Pizza Galley brothers jumped in. All we had to hear from Commissioner Sherling was this is about saving lives. Now, if you ask a pilot to see if he can get out of his house from his wife and kids for a day to fly to Minnesota, that sounds like a fun day. So we enjoyed the flying part of this. We put in 11 straight days, 22,000 miles. It went without a hitch, and there were a lot of pilots, a lot of folks that you already thanked in there, and over 4,000 samples were brought to the Mayo Clinic for testing for Vermonters. So we're very privileged to have been of assistance, and we're ready to stand by here and do it again if needed. So thank you.
Well, thank you very much, Marty. And again, I have to say, each and every piece of this and things you heard on the video today were essential to us. If we didn't have the flights, we weren't able to get to Mayo and get those expedited and get those the results back to us, we wouldn't be as successful as we are today. So it filled the gap. We found some other ways to accomplish what we need to do from a testing perspective, which is great news as well. But we needed to fill that gap in that 2-week period. So again, thanks for the generosity of so many in order to accomplish that. And we'll find countless cases just like the ones described today across Vermont of people, neighbors helping neighbors. And again, that's what makes Vermont so special. That we're so small and unique, and we know someone who can accomplish something that's needed. And we've been able to reach out to those, and they've reached out to us as well to offer. So with that, we'll open up to questions at this point.
All right, we're going to start with folks in the room. We'll start with Calvin.
Can you hear me?
We're going to start with Calvin from WCS.
Sorry. Okay, so I think this is a question for Commissioner Harrington on the phone. He's here. So the state, as you mentioned, has taken a number of steps to bolster people answering the phones, but as of this point, we've only filled about a third of initial claims. At what point, or when do you think we'll be able to send out every single check and have every person that applied get their checks?
Commissioner Harrington.
Yeah, so thank you, Calvin. Thank you, Governor. Again, we're talking tens of thousands, and as the governor said in the past, I'm not making excuses. We do have our team working, and we are bringing on new people, as many as hopefully 25 new people today. They all have to go through training on how to use our system. A lot of people are saying, well, why can't you just put people on the phones to take claims? And all those people have to recognize that they have to be trained in how to actually administer a UI claim or take a UI claim, and also use our mainframe system to be able to do that. So we have brought on more staff just in the past week. We've brought on about 30 people so far between various state agencies to assist in clearing issues on claims. We have this additional 20 to 25 people that hopefully can either go live this afternoon or tomorrow to help clear claims. We are working through the process of the self-employed. Our biggest concern, obviously, is the people who have applied in past and have not received checks to date, or received maybe one check and then stopped receiving checks. So we're trying to work oldest to newest, so that the people that filed in early and mid-March, we're clearing those issues as quickly as we can to get those people up and ready. We believe there may be an opportunity here which requires some recoding of the mainframe system that would allow people to get caught up on filing status through some self work or direction, or self-help, I guess, in that sense, self-service, as opposed to needing to contact a customer service representative to do that work. And we should know, hopefully later today, whether that solution is a viable solution, but it would allow people to file one day for a past week. That would then get uploaded in the system overnight, and then file the next day for another past week, get that uploaded in the system that night, and then file the next day. So they could essentially, in a matter of days, get caught up on, 3 or 4 missed weeks because their claim had an issue attached to them. So again, we are trying to pull every lever. We're using every partnership we can to get people trained up as quickly as we can to resolve the issues. But it remains our number one priority to get benefits and get benefits to those who have gone, weeks without receiving them.
Thank you.
All right, Stuart?
If I could follow up on that, Governor, because Commissioner's not in the room. We're getting hammered with complaints from Vermonters who are either aggravated or angry or just plain out of money. And I'm wondering, they said they've reached out to you but haven't gotten a response. Now, you may be inundated, I appreciate it. But what can you say to those individual Vermonters who now are a month into this and we're running out of money?
Yeah, I fully understand their frustration, their anger. They have every right to be. And some of them are just plain scared because they don't have any money. And I appreciate that. A week ago, I acknowledged we had a problem. And I asked our team to put together a plan the next day. This was last Wednesday. And they reacted and came back with a plan, which I said, move forward and pull every lever you can to expedite the plan. But the plan wasn't instantaneous. We went into action on Friday. And over the weekend and into today, and it's, I believe, showing some benefit, but it's not instantaneous. And it's not enough for me to say have some patience, because this isn't about patience, and I accept responsibility for this. This is an area that we didn't foresee, and certainly Again, no excuses, but we need to do better, and we're going to do better. And if this isn't enough, doesn't prove to be enough, we'll initiate further methods and other strategies to get money in the hands of Vermonters who need it. So I feel their pain, and I accept that, and we'll do better.
All right, we're going to move to the phone lines now. The first in the queue is Lisa from the Valley Reporter.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
My question is about farmers markets, and it's probably for Secretary Curley. When do you anticipate having a plan for farmers markets to open throughout the state, as farmers need to begin planting their seedlings in the ground?
Again, Lisa, we understand the need, and we want to put this on the front of the list, so to speak. We'll be announcing some plans on Friday, but suffice it to say that if we can do this safely, we want to make sure that people understand they can still sell their goods, but they have to do it in a much different way. They can do it from home at this point with curbside service, being safe. But to put everyone together at this point in time is just not something, in the traditional fashion, is just not something that would be beneficial to many. We still have the not to assemble in more than 10 people in any sense. And so we're trying to figure that out. We have a plan that we're working with the Secretary of Agriculture, and we should be able to implement something. It may not be the first in this first week, but certainly over the next week or two, we want to make sure that we get back to some sense of normal.
Thank you.
Sean Cunningham, Chester Telegraph.
Thank you. This is a question for Governor Scott. Last night we received a press release about the Economic Mitigation and Recovery Task Force to restart the state after the pandemic. And I'm wondering if you could speak to the process for choosing the 19 members of the task force, because it appears there's only one member from the entire southern part of the state, and I wondered how that happens.
Well, we didn't pick it as much geographically as we did trying to find people who would want to step up to help in the different categories, different sectors. So I don't know who we reached out to specifically, but it was a list of many. Secretary Curley is on the line. Maybe one of her members could answer some of this as well.
Yes, thank you, Governor. We had so many folks who reached out when they heard this task force was being put together and offered their help. And we really wanted to keep it very small so that we could have folks who are nimble. This isn't an advisory. This is as the governor's terms, roll up your sleeves and give us additional bandwidth. And so they were really hard choices. And we did actually have some folks that were identified in the southern part of the state, and at least one who ended up not being able to join us just for, time commitment purposes. So what we foresee is that we will actually use broader help than specifically just the folks that are on the task force. We try to get folks on the task force who inspire others to also pitch in and help. And so, there are a lot of folks who are agreeable to helping. And we're keeping a list of those folks. So, we love the help. We're so grateful. It's just a matter of trying to manage, a really large group of people.
Just to follow up, is the task force subject to the open meeting laws?
That's a great question.
I don't know if Jay is on the line, but I think it's advisory to me as governor, so it would not be, the public meeting law would not be overriding that.
All right. Mike Donahue, the Islander.
Good morning. Can you hear me?
We can.
Governor, there is considerably less traffic on the roads these days. Wondering what A&R and EOT has done if they've done any work on reducing the pollution and the amount of wasted fuel each day due to the long timing cycles for traffic lights. They're all out of sync, and people are just sitting there for 1 or 2 minutes. There's nobody in sight, especially with the no right-hand turn lane. And I realize a good chunk of those may be in Burlington, South Burlington, and outside the state view, but there's still a significant number in the state, and wondering what, if anything, they've done to work with the cities on reducing this pollution and wasted fuel and everything, especially operating at night when hardly anybody's even on the road. They are still running full cycle traffic lights.
A good point, Mike. I don't have the answer to that, and we'll be happy to get back to you. I haven't been out much myself, and usually I pick up on things like that when I'm traveling throughout Vermont. But again, I think many of us have chosen to stay home and stay safe, and haven't experienced that. But I take your point, and I'm just not sure. And some of that is municipalities having control of their own traffic control devices, but some of that is state as well. So I will be happy to look into that. I don't believe Secretary Flynn is on the line, but I can. We'll check into that and get you back some of an answer of some sort.
Great, thank you. And one quick follow-up. Dr. Levine spoke the other day about the need for masks when he was out and about in stores and seeing everything. One question I keep getting asked is when you as governor will start wearing a mask, and especially if you want fellow Vermonters to follow you in this issue. And how many times have you been tested for COVID-19?
Yeah, I have not been tested myself. I do take my temperature every day, and I do wear a mask when I'm out, as you might have noticed, or maybe didn't notice, but I wear one into the press conference. And then when I'm speaking, I take it off. So I don't have it on during the press conference, but try to maintain that social distance with others. But again, when I'm out, I am wearing a mask.
Thank you.
Brittany Weir, Local 22.
Hi. So my question is for Dr. Levine, I believe. It's about rapid testing. There's been reports that a couple states have had issues with their rapid tests, whether receiving them or not. Vermont and New Hampshire were supposed to receive about 15 tests. Just wondering if the tests, did arrive, or have there been any issues with the test or the amount that was shipped altogether, and have the rapid tests begun, and which population the state will be getting the rapid tests?
Sure. So we received 15 machines. Unfortunately, we only received enough test materials to do about 100 tests. And as we speak, those machines are undergoing some validation testing in concert with the University of Vermont lab, because we did get some advance notice that there were concerns about the sensitivity of the test, and we want to make sure before we deploy them, we actually can rely on them. Does that cover all your questions?
Yes, I believe so. Thank you.
Thank you.
Joe, Barton Chronicle.
Hello. I've heard some people talking about the difficulty of putting in applications for Vermont Health Connect. I don't know whether that's been the state's experience, and if it is there some consideration being given to extending the open enrollment period?
I believe, Joe, that's been done, but I would ask maybe Secretary Smith or someone else who might be on the line, and if not, we would be happy to get that information. But Secretary Smith will try and answer that.
Joe, for a few days we had a call center in Virginia that went down because of a corona outbreak, and that has we have sort of adjusted to that sort of situation. We believe that people that are trying to get to Vermont Health Connect are getting through. It won't be as quickly as you normally do, but at the same time, we're getting through. Secondly, we have extended the open enrollment period. It will be extended to May 15th, and that was announced yesterday, that we will be extending that enrollment period.
Thank you very much. I missed that last part. I appreciate it.
Thanks, Joe. Next up, we have Kat, WCAX.
Right, this question is for Dr. Levine. The Institute for Health Metrics and Evaluation at the University of Washington released some data yesterday showing that half of the U.S. may have hit COVID peak already or will very soon. Vermont was among the states it listed as past peak. As you indicated earlier, we may have hit a plateau. So my question is, have we hit our peak yet? And what data would you need to see to be able to say whether we have or have not?
Good question, Kat. We started with our modeling studies, which projected the peak would be mid to late April. Some of them even said maybe early May. The most recent modeling study showed that this week would actually be our peak. Based on the curve I just showed you earlier today, and information we get every morning about number of COVID-positive patients in the hospital, COVID-positive patients in ICUs, persons under investigation for COVID in the hospitals, that's been kind of at a level set for a number of days now. And so we're certainly not seeing a huge surge in any of those statistical parameters. So I'm going to be very cautious as I say this, but cautiously say that perhaps we are in that peak zone at that time of a plateauing, and that all of the projections that were very thoughtful and said that we would not be a worst case scenario, we might be an in-between the best and worst case scenarios, we're probably right, and that we're even going to be on the side of a more best case scenario. Like to see the rest of this week go by to the beginning of next week till I would be more definitive about that, but that's where we're leaning towards.
So I guess the follow-up question to that is, if this is potentially our peak, if you will, I imagine none of our surge sites have been used, and correct me if I'm wrong on that. But how do we decide when it's time to close those if we hit this plateau?
Yeah, we do have one individual at one of the surge sites right now. But Secretary Smith looked like he was eager to talk about that topic. But I think it's going to be a very common sense answer, which is the one I would have given. But I'm going to give him a chance.
We'll hopefully I won't contradict Dr. Levine, but we'll close the surge sites when we're ready. When we're rest assured that we are past the peak and that we are in a trend where we can close them safely. So you've seen some of the what I would call special populations, isolation units that we have not gone forward with. For example, Goddard College, we made the announcement yesterday that we would not be moving forward with Goddard College. Instead, we'll be relying on the surge site at the Holiday Inn in South Burlington as our major surge site, has 150 beds there. In terms of those special populations, those that are COVID positive but have either choose not to go back home or don't have a home, or are special populations like disabled or have disabilities, and we do not want to put them back into a residential environment. So you are seeing a little bit of movement. At the same time, I want to be very cautious here. And, we have got to make sure that we continue doing what the governor has said in terms of social distancing, stay at home, or else the progress that we made can be undermined. So You are seeing movements in facilities that we are not going to be utilizing, but at the same time, we are utilizing some facilities and will close the medical surge sites when we have reason to believe that we are truly on the downturn of this virus.
I just want to say as well, we should be proud of what we've accomplished because the strategy that we've taken has put us in this position. And it was the work of so many that allowed that to happen. Having said that, we are within 300 miles of some very significant sectors, being New York City, Boston, where there's a lot of volatility. So for us, because this virus knows no boundaries, no state boundaries, we have to be careful to be sure that we have enough protection in place for this not to start another fire here in Vermont. So that's why we're being cautious, being careful, and we'll, if we continue to do this and do it in a strategic way, we'll be fine.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks, Kat. Patricia,
You've been muted. To unmute yourself, press *6.
Patricia?
Hello, can you hear me?
You are no longer muted.
Patricia, are you there? Can you hear us?
Hello, can you hear me?
We can.
Oh, wonderful. I had to click *6 a few times here. I'm wondering, this might be a Dr. Levine question. I wasn't able to pull up my prior story, but I believe I remember you saying, Dr. Levine, that last week the state had those 15 rapid response testing machines, which of course it does. But I believe last week the expectation was there would be enough testing materials for, I believe it was 1,800 tests, 120 per machine. And what you said earlier, with there being only enough materials for about 100, I'm wondering, why so few materials were given. My understanding is this came from the federal government. And if you happen to know who made the decision to give so little, and if any steps have been taken to rectify that or get answers for that, if those answers haven't been given.
Yeah, so you're right. The machines did come from the federal government, as did the testing materials. I can't give you a name in the federal government, but at the same time, our experience in Vermont is not unusual. It seems that much like other aspects of this epidemic management from a national standpoint, when hotter spots are identified, they are prioritized to get some of the materials. So even though we really feel fortunate we got the machines, we were not as fortunate in getting the actual testing kits or materials because of disease activity here compared with places that had more going on. But that's not stopping us by any means, and that's why we're trying to validate these instruments, and we'll worry about the issue of trying to find more test materials, just like we've been resourceful in so many other ways. The governor's actually been very fond of saying that the company Abbott is located in Maine, and he's talked to the governor of Maine, and they actually weren't prioritized to get these materials either, and have been having to be resourceful in terms of what they do for testing in the state of Maine. So, this is a national issue that we can deal with as many components of it as we can at a time, but the realities are we're fortunate to be a low-activity state right now, and I'd rather be a low-activity state than get into too many arguments with the federal government about why didn't we get the materials sent to us as a priority. Okay?
Thank you.
Tim Whiston, Vermont Business Magazine.
Hi, Governor. I understand that you have the recovery task force here in Vermont, but I was wondering why Vermont was not part of the regional effort, recovery effort that New York and Massachusetts and other of our other states neighboring us are part of. Is Vermont going to be part of that, or how do we stand and why aren't we part of that?
Well, a couple things. First of all, we did receive a call from New York last night offering their apologies for not letting us, not making us aware of what they've contemplated. Here's what I know about the program thus far. It's more of a formal recognition of what we're already doing. They're trying to get with other states, not to strategize as to doing it all at one time, but really just contemplating what other states are doing. And we've been doing that, again, informally with, I speak with Governor Baker, Governor Sununu, Governor Mills, and others about what their strategies are. And so what New York is trying to formalize is just talking with other states, making sure there's not a ripple effect of some action they might take that would put another state in a tough position. For instance, we don't have this problem here in Vermont, but along in Maine, New Hampshire, Massachusetts, and others, if they were to open their beaches, or if one was to open up their beaches and another one wasn't, everyone would come to their beaches or come to their state, which could cause a problem. What they're trying to do is make sure that other states know not to do again, to do this as one body, but recognize that every state is unique and has their own challenges and have done things correctly. We in Vermont have done things pretty well. And, if you look at the statistics, hopefully they'll continue. But we can be proud of the actions we've taken. We've actually been maybe a little more stringent, probably more, I can say with certainty, we're more stringent than other states in some aspects. So, but what they do or what we do might have an impact on their states. And they're just trying to formalize and make sure that we're talking at least once a week about how we contemplate opening our doors again. So, again, it's not... I think a lot of people just thought that states would work together and come out with this one big plan and implement it, and it would be the same throughout the region. And that's just not the case, and that's not what it was. That's not the thought process behind it. But again, suffice it to say, we'll be part of that as well, because we want to hear from other states, and they want to hear from us, because again, we've done things pretty well, and they may want to hear what we've done that's benefited Vermont.
And following up on that, what you said about the beaches, obviously a lot of people flood to Vermont in the summer when it warms up, and we have a lot of second homeowners from these very impacted areas. Is that one of your concerns about not wanting to open up the state all at once and move forward quickly?
I have a lot of concerns about a lot of different areas, and again, we don't want to do one thing that would be detrimental to our state or the people in our state. Again, we've had a strategy in place that I think has been beneficial for many, and we just want to make sure as we plateau and maybe go down on the downside, that we're doing this in a very, very methodical way, so that we don't have these unintended consequences. So yes, we don't want to open up one sector that would allow, just as I said before, if we were to open up, let's say, all our campgrounds tomorrow, and I just had a text from Governor Mills this morning, and they're concerned about golf courses in Maine, New Hampshire, Mass. And if one of those states were to open up their golf courses, you can imagine what would happen. There would be a lot of people traveling to their state to play golf. And so those are the types of things that we just want to make sure that we're strategic and that we really pay attention, so that we don't have this ripple effect or some ramification that we're not anticipating.
Thank you.
All right, Chris Roy, Newport Daily Express.
Yes, good morning. I have two questions, and this might have been kind of answered before. What is the status of the third-party vendor that might be coming on to help with some of the unemployment claims? And I'm also wondering if Vermont has a mutual aid system for hospitals, that if some of these smaller facilities have a sudden rash of staff members who can't work because they have the virus, if medical professionals who can come in and help those facilities?
Yeah, I'll have Secretary Smith answer that, but again, I think we're blessed here in Vermont with this nimbleness, this small nature where we try and help each other out. And I think you can find, he might reflect on at least one case where UVM Medical Center stepped up to help us out of a dire situation.
Sure. Thank you for the question, because it gives me an opportunity to talk about the response and the hospitals and the all across Vermont and the response that they've done. If we had a case where we had various employees of a specific hospital that would have to be outside of the hospital and there be cause of staff shortage, there are surge facilities, staff surge facilities that would be in the area, or we could move to staff surge facilities. We have these surge facilities and a transportation plan to do that. Secondly, the hospitals have been helping each other in terms of staffing. The governor mentioned UVM Medical Center, and I can tell you they have stepped up to the plate as well as everyone else. Rutland Hospital, for example, and others that are out there that have really stepped in to help supplement staff when staff has been impacted by this virus, for example, at various long-term care facilities. So we have a fairly robust system in place. The second thing is we're looking at staff beds in terms of all our modeling. It seems like we will have enough staff beds to handle the latest modeling that's going on. But let me assure you that if any one hospital is impacted, we have both surge capacity and the ability to help out other hospitals within our system. And I've seen it happen already in terms of the long-term care facility, and we can't be grateful enough to the healthcare professionals here in this state.
Okay, thank you.
Did that answer your two questions, Chris?
Yeah, no, I was just asking about the other question. Last week, I think it was on Friday, somebody alluded that you might be getting a third-party vendor to handle unemployment claims, and I'm just wondering the status of that. And is it going to be a private third-party vendor?
Yeah, Commissioner Harrington can answer that, I believe.
Yes, sir. So we wrapped up proposals and are working through contracting, hopefully to expedite that today, and have begun already technical conversations as well as training and development conversations for this vendor solution that will be stood up. And we are looking at hopefully over the next 5 to 7 days having a solution in place that would allow us to start transitioning calls over to the third-party vendor. And I think that answers your other question, that it is a third-party vendor. It is someone that the state already has a relationship with.
Okay, that's what I was getting at. Okay, thank you.
Great. Avery, WCAX.
Governor Scott, there's been legislation just introduced in the U.S. House, one by Congressman Welch, to help restart the economy. Do you think Congress should determine when the economy should be restarted?
Well, I think we all have the same goal, and I would just add that again, we've done a pretty good job here trying to mitigate any outbreaks here in Vermont, and as the statistics show, it's a model for others as well. I believe that we have this, well in hand, and we want to make sure that we protect Vermonters and those who are here in our state by just turning this on a quarter turn of the spigot at a time. And we'll take that methodical approach, very strategic. And I just don't see how one body in Washington can determine when we open this up, because every state is different, every region is different, and again we'll we'll continue to do what I think is right based on the data, the science, and information, advice from the experts. And we'll get through this that way. And I believe that, history will show that we did the right thing.
So just to be clear, you're saying you want the state government and the governor to make this decision?
Absolutely. I mean, we didn't have their input in some respects when we got into this, and we don't need their perspective. Well, we'll take their advice, but we don't need them telling us how to get ourselves out of this either.
Okay, thank you.
Pat Bradley, WAMC.
Good afternoon. Governor Scott, Tim McQuiston from Vermont Business Magazine actually asked most of the questions that I have. Could I clarify, you did say you would be part of the multi-state council that New York announced earlier this week. Does that mean that you are, quote unquote, formally joining the multi-state group?
Yeah, we're trying to get, we had this conversation late last night with the governor's office, and so we don't know all the details and when the meetings would take place and who would partake in that either. So just again, we have an interest in being part of the solution. Anything we can do to help other states, we want to do. And anything we can learn from other states, we want to take in and glean from. So, yeah, we want to be part of that. I would also say that there may be other states. For instance, I don't know if Maine or New Hampshire are going to join this group. They don't have a border attached to New York, but I would say that we'll continue to talk, just as we've been doing, to try and make sure that we're in touch. We know what the other state is doing, so it doesn't impact our region in a way that could affect Vermonters. So again, anything we can do to work together, I'm in favor of.
What do you think the biggest benefits to Vermont itself could be in working with this multi-state council to, really have an integrated framework, as they put it, to, get the economy going again when we can do that?
Yeah, I don't know what they mean by integrated framework. I would look at this the way it was explained to me, and again, I'll see it more in detail when it arrives on my desk, but I view this as letting every state know what the other one is doing, because what they do in New York, for instance, I don't believe they, during this ordeal, that they closed down their lodging. I believe that they said that was essential, whereas in Vermont and most of the other states, it was non-essential. So if we were to, in one area or another, if someone in New Hampshire or Maine or Mass were to open up lodging, that could have an effect on them individually if you don't do it together, because everyone would flock to that one state for whatever purpose that was. I use the example of the golf courses or the beaches as well. It's just understanding what, if you're going to do something, what effect that'll have on you and what effect it might have on others as well. So it's really just sharing information, and I think that's what this is about, and we want to be part of sharing whatever information we have to benefit others.
And one last question. You just formed the Economic Mitigation Task Force. Was that with this multi-state council in mind to have that mesh with them, or was this just kind of...
We didn't, again, I didn't even know about the New York initiative until the press conference we had on Monday. It was, I found out from you. I didn't hear about it from any other source. We have been planning our task force for the last 2 weeks. So this isn't in reaction to that at all.
Do you think it could mesh with what the council might want to do?
Well, again, I don't think the council is going to dictate what any state is going to do. I'm saying that it's just an information type of a process. So whatever steps we decide to take, we'll share with others. We're hopeful that whatever steps they take, they'll share with us so that we can, again, just have a complete understanding of what's going on in the region. It's not going to be a process where this coalition is going to dictate that we all do the same thing all at the same time. Because as I heard Governor Lamont from Connecticut, he doesn't expect to open up. He said this on CNN. He doesn't expect to open up anything until the end of May, possibly. And with the numbers that we're receiving, I believe we're somewhere near peak, if not there at peak. And we want to be able to open up some of our economy. So I don't want to wait for Connecticut in some respects, but for us to convey to them what we're doing might be helpful to their state.
All right, we're going to move to the next questioner, Neil, the Vermont Standard. Neil, Vermont Standard, *6 to unmute. Neil?
Hi. Yeah, my question was already answered.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Ann Wallace Allen, BT Digger.
Hi, can you hear me?
We can.
Great. Governor, when the topic of farmers markets came up, you mentioned that there will be some sort of new information on Friday. Do you think that there's going to be any announcements easing restrictions on Friday, even some small restriction somewhere?
That is my hope.
Okay. I won't press you for details.
I probably won't give you any.
I understand. So, is the reopening of businesses contingent upon getting widespread testing in Vermont? And whether or not it is, what is the role of the state government labs in getting some tests here?
Well, we, as was described by Dr. Levine, we are going down every path, pulling every lever we possibly can to increase our testing capacity. We think this is part of this rapid response, is part of the answer. When we see one of these embers flare up in this very dry scenario, we want to make sure that we surround that to make sure that it doesn't engulf into a wildfire. So we want to make sure that we have that in place. We've increased our testing tremendously over the last 4 to 5 weeks and feel pretty good about that. And we want to continue to grow that. So I've tried to describe this before, but if in the spigot, turning it on a quarter of a turn at a time, we have to watch the data and watch the science and watch the modeling to be sure we're not putting pressure on some area. We're not having an adverse effect on something by an action we took. So that's why we have to do it strategically.
I understand, but are the state government labs, it sounds like we're sort of reliant on external parties to get these tests up and running. And I'm wondering if the state government labs are also developing something that might help to get widespread testing out there.
I'm going to let Dr. Levine answer this, but I'm going to take a stab at we're continuing to test through our state lab and have increased testing capacity within the lab itself as well, with UVM Medical Center as well, with other entities outside the state. So that's part of the answer. It's not going to rely on just one sector, one system. We are trying to develop relationships in any way we can with other areas where we can provide the testing we think we need in order to open the economy back up.
Okay.
Not too much.
So, Dr. Levine,
not too much for me to elaborate on, except, a week ago we were in the top 5 states per capita for testing. So we talk about our 750-ish positive tests now, but that's in the context of having tested over 12,000 Vermonters just during this part of the epidemic. So we'll continue to go with success, if you will. So the State Public Health Lab is a component of a multi-tiered testing apparatus that includes UVM Medical Center, that includes a number of commercial labs out of state, and possibly will include this point-of-care testing if that validation testing goes well. And then you'll hear later on, when the working group has responded, with its recommendations regarding how we integrate serologic testing into that whole mix.
All right, thanks. Can I ask one more question of Lindsay Curley?
Sure. Secretary Curley.
You guys put in place a portal where people could file reports about non-essential businesses that were operating. I'm wondering if you're finding in general from the reports you're hearing from the public, are people generally compliant?
So those, the filing of potential non-compliance with the executive order goes to the Vermont State Police. And so I don't specifically see details of those filings. However, I can tell you what I'm understanding is that the Vermont State Police will reach out to local law enforcement. The law enforcement do a drive-by and try to assess what's going on and provide, some education about the executive order. And generally, I think people are willing to comply at that point.
Commissioner Sherling, do you have anything to offer on that?
Nothing further. I think that's an accurate representation of what's going on. Is education is working.
Okay, thanks.
All right, we're going to move to Han Davis. Han Davis, *6 to unmute.
Can you hear me now?
We can.
This is a question for either the governor or for Mike Smith. The surge that's absolutely coming is a huge financial challenge to all the Vermont hospitals. They're losing money like they actually had it. The question I have, my question is this: the federal government is starting to move money into medical systems and hospital systems. They're partly loans and they're partly grants. I'd like to ask my question is this. I believe that some money has already moved into Vermont on the grant side, not the loan side. I'd like to know how much that is. I would like to know what the second part of the question is, will the state of Vermont be directing how that money gets distributed from one hospital to the next? And if the state is involved in that decision, will it do so keeping in mind or using the program that is the Green Mountain Care Board orders for at least 6 community hospitals I think 8 community hospitals to provide a sustainability plan for the next budget?
I'll let Secretary Smith answer part of that. I just wanted to say we want to acknowledge that there is an issue that we have with the HHS at this point. In terms of their formula, where the money is going directly to the hospitals. And because of this program, the all-payer model that we have here in the state, it didn't account for that because what they were basing the formula on is more of a fee-for-service model. So we've reached out to them, and they totally understand that. We're unique in some respects, so we're hoping to work with them to formulate a different plan so that we can get more money in the hands of some of these hospitals that are really at risk.
Yeah. Thank you. Can I get a quick on whether in doing so that you will be looking at the issue of healthcare reform in the state, which is on hold a bit now, but is still out there, and that they're working especially on the small community hospitals?
Yeah, we'll determine that in the near future. Right now, we're just taking care of the crisis that we have in front of us, and then we'll debate that at a later date. But hopefully not in the in the near future, we'll be able to have that debate.
Thank you. I have one question for Dr. Levine.
I think Secretary Smith was just going to offer some additional information.
Oh.
So, Ham, let me sort of go through. The hospitals, as the governor said, have received a tranche of money through the grant program. As the governor said, there is some issues dealing with the distribution of that money. You had started off your question saying hospitals are under enormous stress. I want to sort of open that up to say the whole healthcare system is under enormous fiscal stress during this time, and we're looking at it in terms of 3 lanes: the provider network and how we can be assistance to the provider network, and we have an application process for that, and then the hospital network, and where do we need to sort of help them bridge this time period where some of their revenue that they would normally expect through elective surgeries and other is not available now. And then the third lane, sort of our community partners, the designated agencies, those sort of things, making sure that the whole system is stabilized during this period of time. So to answer your question, yes, the hospitals have gotten something. It's been enormous help in terms of helping them, in terms of the grant process, but they haven't gotten as much as they should because of the calculation. And the governor, through the quick action of the governor, this is trying to be rectified as quick as possible. And I'll go to Dr. Levine for the next question that Ham wants.
Thank you very much. Dr. Levine, there's been a lot of press lately about the use of antibody tests, and especially in hospital. The CDC is testing those systems, those tests. The antibody tests have not been certified by anybody, but they're being used. I'd like to know what you think about that. Are you concerned about whether somebody using those tests too early? Because what it could do is it could obviously give somebody who actually has the disease a get out of jail free card, and they could then they'd be considered to be virus free when they actually weren't. That could be a real problem. That's my view. Could you tell us where you stand on the question today of antibody testing in Vermont?
Yes, thanks for that question. I think where I stand is as a academically curious but at the same time pragmatic clinical person who really wants to know their role and wants to understand them better. And that's why I assigned this working group made up of university infectious disease clinicians at both the adult and pediatric levels, university and public health laboratory specialists, and public health surveillance experts to really analyze this well over the course of this week and come up with a hopefully suite of recommendations to me regarding them. I actually am fine with Copley Hospital proceeding as it is. It's being done on a very small scale. It's being done with curiosity in mind as well as trying to be pragmatic. It's only being done, to my knowledge, on the healthcare workforce. And I think what they're learning from early experience is that there may be some uncertainty in many of the results, precipitating the use of the traditional nasopharyngeal specimen with PCR, and that's going to be helpful information for everyone moving forward. But I think the reason the FDA has essentially not approved anything except perhaps one device, and there's literally hundreds of manufacturers trying to enter this market and profit from it, shall we say. I think that we're going to find that a lot more information is going to be coming out soon. I don't feel pressured right now because, frankly, I don't feel this is the moment in time when we would deploy this test anyways. We're going to continue to be using our more, if I could call them now after a month, traditional tests with PCR to try to define acute infection, and so that we can contain that wherever it's found. But there is going to be a time in the very short-term future, I believe, that it would be helpful to know the immune status of the population. And if that's done responsibly and with true knowledge of how sensitive and specific these tests are, what information they actually can give us, and where they may mislead us, then I think we'll have moved forward. Okay?
Thank you, sir. I'm done.
Thank you, ma'am. Collins, 7 days.
Hi, this question is for Commissioner Harrington. Could you just give us an update on the new filing system for self-employed people? I think the messaging coming out from the department last week was that it should be up and running to accept initial claims early this week. I haven't seen any update to that. Could you just fill people in on the timeline?
Sure. So we hope to have, there are 2 phases to this, as you know, but the part where they would open their initial claim and put all their information in to create their profile within the next day or two. We are working through the final steps for verifying wages and verifying identity that have to be a part of the system, and so we're working through that process. We are going to be setting up a new 800 number that should go live later today that would provide daily updates to individuals and just another avenue for them to call and find out whether there is any change on the PUA or the self-employed program. But again, we're just working out some final details so that we can start accepting and opening claims. Again, it should be coming in relative short order.
Great. And then just a follow-up for the governor. You had mentioned that if these strategies and these methods that you're rolling out at the unemployment center prove not to be enough, that you would look at other strategies to get money in the hands of Vermonters who need it. Could you elaborate a little more on that? What further strategies could you initiate if these problems continue over the next few weeks?
Oh, well, I would hope not over the next few weeks. I'm hoping that this will happen much more expeditiously. But if that were to happen, again, we're contemplating a number of different ways to get money in the hands of Vermonters, and I don't know exactly what that's going to mean. But again, suffice it to say, we're going to get creative if this doesn't work.
Thanks.
John Dillon, VPR.
Good afternoon, and thank you. Thanks for having me. My question is also about unemployment claims and the backlog in processing. We just heard this inspiring story from Donna Carpenter about how private sector entrepreneurs met the need of mask shortage and to deal with a surge. And what we're seeing now is a surge of people without money and needing immediate help. It's another kind of surge. So have you thought about tapping that kind of expertise beyond government and beyond government contractors? It seems that much more is needed right now. People are they need cash in hand, and I wonder how wide in that you're thinking of going forward to address it.
Yeah, again, if this continues, we'll have to get very creative. But in order, the unemployment system is based on a lot of confidentiality, and we have to be careful what we do there. It's not as though we can just bring in a number of people in order to accomplish this mission. So if again, I have confidence that the measures that the plan that we put into place as of last Friday will be fruitful, that it will accomplish what we hope. But again, if it doesn't, we'll take other measures. And what they are, I'm not sure, but we'll get creative in coming up with ways to get money in the back in the pockets of Vermonters who desperately need it.
Yeah. And how much time will it be, a week? I mean, will you wait till Friday to make that call?
Well, again, we're monitoring, on a daily basis how we're doing. And this will be, we have people over there being part of the solution. We've increased the capacity. So, I want to know every day whether we're making gains and whether we're accomplishing what we hope to. And if that doesn't prove to be the case in the next 2 to 3 days, we're going to consider other methods because, again, Vermonters are in desperate need. I understand that, and we have an obligation to help out.
Thank you.
Greg, the County Courier.
Hi, thank you. So my question is about going forward, kind of the off-ramp of dealing with this crisis. It was mentioned at the beginning of this briefing that social distancing will likely still be needed. Do you anticipate that weddings, graduations, proms, etc., are going to be able to be safe this year, and whether they'll be allowed for that matter?
Yeah, hard to say, Greg. And again, everything is determined on the modeling and what we're doing in terms of the data that we receive, making sure that we don't exceed our healthcare capacity, but also that we're not, exceeding, putting people at risk. So we'll be watching that. I wish I could tell you in some definitive way whether it's a yes or a no, but I just don't have enough information at this point. My hope is that we'll be able to gather in larger groups, as you might have recalled about 5 weeks ago, when we put 6 weeks ago when we started, or 5 weeks ago. We started with, I think it was no gatherings over 500. Then we went to reduce that to maybe 250, and then to 100, and then to, whatever it was. So we may have to work our way back out the same way we got ourselves in. But that will be determined by whatever data we're seeing, the number of positive cases and so forth. So in terms of, this off-ramp, we talked a little bit about this morning at another one of my conference calls, and it's more about how in the future, not what sectors, but how do we accomplish what we need to accomplish? How do we get back to work in a way that is safe and responsible? And so we have to think about that, the hows, not just which sector, but how are we going to do this and go back to some sort of normal.
So if you were part of the planning process for, say, a prom or a wedding, would you cancel it by now, or would you still continue with planning processes?
Are you talking about a prom in the next 30 days?
Yeah, like high school proms before graduation time.
I would say if it's anything in the next, certainly within the next 3 to 4 weeks, I would not have it scheduled myself. But I can understand those trying to hold out hope. I've had a couple of birthdays with family members over the last 2 or 3 weeks that have been by Skype. So we're going to have to get creative in how we celebrate these milestones.
Okay, and I do have a follow-up question about the unemployment. With as much money that's going out of the unemployment fund, how's the state looking to recoup some of that money and build the fund back up going forward? I know that employers aren't going to be, the money going out right now isn't going to be calculated against employers. So how's that money going to be built back up in the coming months or years?
Well, again, hopefully we'll get people back to work in a controlled fashion. Some of this money will be coming from the federal government as well. But again, we'll have to see as we progress through this. We're still in the midst of the emergency at this point, but we have our eye on that as well.
All right, we're going to move to Wilson at the AP.
Hi, my question is kind of, I was pre-planned it, but it kind of follows on to the question Greg just asked. Do you think, I don't know, this is for the governor or Dr. Levine, whomever, when do you think Vermont could get back to whatever would be considered, I guess, the pre-virus normal? I mean, is that going to take a COVID-19 vaccine to before we can truly get back to normal?
My guess is yes, but I'll let Dr. Levine answer that.
My educated guess is yes as well. But, you know, there's a lot of ground to be gained between where we are now and what you're calling the pre-COVID normal. So, and it doesn't necessarily have to look as austere as everything may be seeming to people now. But we do, yes, have to give time to the development of new innovations, new vaccines, new therapies. And I will have to say, we need to give ourselves a little time to learn about this virus. You know, in Washington, Dr. Fauci is always fond of saying the virus determines what happens next and what we do next. And I wish our knowledge of this virus, you know, was more advanced, but it's a novel virus. It's never infected the human race before, and we need to give that time to play out from the scientific community aspect as well. In addition, the fact is we haven't dealt with this virus before. We don't know what the level of disease suppression that's going to occur, how long that's going to last, how many episodes of outbreaks or areas that we need to contain begin to happen. And all of that's going to be very instructive. And just like we need to learn from the virus, we need to learn from China, we need to learn from Asia, we need to learn from Europe, we need to learn from the West Coast of America, all of the places that actually preceded us in our experience with the virus, and that will inform us in very many ways. So that I have to, again, indulge people to be patient.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Guy, Paige? Guy? All right, that was our last questioner. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much for tuning in again. Hopefully we'll continue down this path of having some positive news to give you on Friday.